Hello everyone, this is Aether Nomad for a new video, and yes, this time with music. But it's not the only thing that's new in this episode, because for the first time we will do some actual modding today. Hooray! Well, not immediately though, we will first do some spriting, as in the last two videos, because a friend of mine, yes, the same friend as in previous video, asked me to do a little tutorial about spriting for units, or monsters if you prefer. So I decided that this time I shouldn't do a random tutorial with random units because that's a bit boring, and instead I will, on live, create one of the new additions, one of the new content additions in the next Hellenica update. Well, I say next Hellenica update, but it is likely that it will already have been released when you watch this video, because it is almost ready right now, and I'm planning to release it tomorrow at the latest, probably. Anyway, what am I planning to do in this video? Well, you see, I planned to give some new things, some new tools to Soromacia, and in particular, a way to convert death gems into nature gems. Why? Well, because Hellenica's Soromacia has a spell called Ophidian Blood, which allows it to bless any unit it wants, but that also inflicts heavy poison damage to said units. And so, this spell costs nature gems, but Soromacia doesn't have a very good nature gem income. And so, from feedback I received, it became clearly apparent that the nation would be more interesting to play if I gave it another way to get some nature gems besides the way it already has it in Hellenica, which is going for a death scales build. Anyway, how do I plan to make to give Soromacia the means to get nature gems? Well, for now, my thinking is that I could create a new transformation spell for the nation. A transformation spell that can only be cast by Enaries. You know, these death, astral and nature mages that can be recruited in any fort. And this transformation spell would transform them into undead beings, or at least dying beings, that convert their life force into nature gems. And well, as a result, you would lose a mage and you would have to spend some death gems, but you would get the nature gems you wanted. So as you can see, there is a cost. I still need to think about how it works exactly, but we will do that in this video together once I am done with the sprite for this transformed version of the unit. So let's go. Let's start right away with the spriting part of the video. So first, I'm gonna start with the Dominions 5 Inspector, the mod inspector. You certainly know this website already. If you don't, I highly recommend you use it, even if you are not used to modding, because even for simple players, it is very, very useful. But there is one thing that is worth saying when it comes to modding. It is that these 4 boxes that you can see here should be ticked at all times, if you are modding anyway. Well, the last 3 you can see here can only be unlocked if you click the first one, I think. But anyway, it's easy enough. Then what am I going to do? I'm going to look for the Enaries sprite. So I type Enaries, and here it is. So now I'm gonna download it in order to modify it more easily. So I right click on the picture, I save as in my sprite folder, and then I click the picture to toggle the attack sprite, and I do again the same thing. And now I have both Enaries sprites in my personal folders. So here is my vanilla sprite folder, where I saved both Enaries sprites. As you can see, they are named after the ID of the unit, plus a 1 or a 2, depending on whether it is the first sprite, that is to say the idle sprite, or the second sprite, that is to say the attack sprite. Now I'm gonna open this with GIMP, and I'm gonna do it with both sprites, and here we go. So what are we going to do? First, there's one thing that we must notice immediately. It is that these sprites are not properly sized. What I mean by that is that there should always be only powers of 2 in numbers of pixels for the size of the square in which the image is contained. Why? Because if the number of pixels here or here is not a root of 2, a square of 2, a power of 2, then the sprite will appear blurred in game. So in GIMP, I will click on image here, and then on the size of canvas, I suppose in English, and I will put here a power of 2. So the first one that is enough should do, so 16 and 64. And now I replace the sprites at the bottom and in the middle, and done. And I will replace the sprite, because I will never need a sprite that is not with powers of 2 as its length and width. Here, we're done with this first easy step. Now I will reload the picture, because otherwise I will not be able to draw outside this yellow square, rectangle. So it is easier to just reload the picture anyway, regardless of what you want to do then. And done. Now we need to start thinking about what we exactly want to do with this sprite. Well, first, I need to make it easily distinguishable from the vanilla sprite, because both will be used in the same nation. In order to do that, I will modify a color that is easily visible on the sprite, and of course that color will be the brown. I will modify it and probably make it black. But then, if I make it black, there is a slight problem, that is to say that the hair will become will be the same color as the robe, which will be probably a bit weird. And even if the colors are slightly different, it's not guaranteed that we will be able to distinguish them clearly in game. So what I will do is making the hair whiter or grayer, and that fits the thematics behind the spell, because as we said earlier, this Enaries is going to die. He's going to get old very, very quickly and become undead. And undead beings often are represented with white hair, so that's perfect. And then maybe I will find a skull or another zombie head or something and replace the normal head with it. But first things first, we want to remove the parts that we don't want to modify, that is to say the gold. We don't want to modify the gold because, well, it's not alive, right? And it's a nice detail, and it's very important in the lore of Enaries because they are said to wear women clothes and then, of course, jewelry. But that's not enough to do that. We don't want to modify the hair and the robe all at once. And of course we don't want also to modify the skin and the shadow at the same time as the rest. Why? Because we will use color filters, and color filters will affect the entirety of the selected part of the image. So we have to cut the image each part by each part, depending on how we want to modify things. So I will remove everything that's not the robe, or maybe not. Maybe I should start with the hair, because then it would, if I start with the robe and make it black, it will be harder to select only the hair later. So let's see, this brown part shouldn't be part of the hair, I think. So I will not select it. I will then remove it. And I will remove everything that's not the hair for starters. I think that this should be considered the hair, so I will not select it, remove it. I will select it. And now we just have to remove everything else. So in order to start with the hair. Done. Now we have the hair. I select everything. I copy with Ctrl C, and then I come back to the very start of the image, and done. And now Ctrl V, I paste it back. And now only the hair is selected on the image. That's perfect, that's what we wanted. We can now use safely any color filter we want without affecting the rest of the image. So now let's try to make it gray or white. Usually it's a bit harder to make something darker or lighter than to just change the kind of color it has. For example, making something blue into something red is easy, but making something white into something black or the reverse is hard. Why? Because the contrast will not be the same, because sometimes you cannot see that the black in fact contains colors. For example, this is actually slightly green, and when I will make the whole lighter, the green will become more visible and it will be weird. But so, as you can see, that's gonna be a bit harder than just changing any color into any other color, because here we are involved with black and white. But let's try anyway. What should I start with? Well, usually you want to start with luminosity and contrast if all you want is changing the darkness of an image. But if I do that, as I said earlier, colors will appear. But let's try anyway to see what happens. First, if I increase luminosity, it creates an effect similar to what I want, but contrast is lost in the process. So I must also increase contrast. And if I do so, colors start to be more visible as well. And now it's no longer the kind of color we wanted. So maybe I can reach a better balance by finding a good state for both of these buttons, but that's not gonna be enough. And here I'm increasing contrast too much, because these two are clearly white, while this, even when I remove the color, it will become gray, a darker gray. So let's not increase contrast that much, for now at least. Maybe like that for starters. Now we will remove this color we don't want. So we will go in this menu, and here we will reduce saturation to make it grayer. I put the saturation to 100, well, minus 100, so it should theoretically remove the color entirely. Now there is zero color, only shades of white, black and gray. Now we can more safely increase contrast. We will probably want to improve by hand the result here, because I'm not sure it will be great in-game. So let's see what we can do. I think we should maybe make these 2 pixels darker in order to make the head better defined. So I will pick this gray, and it should do it, I think. Then I think we should put some other kinds of gray in here in order to make the hair look less flat, you know. So maybe this one, it's different enough. And then here, maybe we should make it lighter, and here a bit darker in order to reduce that contrast. So maybe this one is too dark. We don't need to be that extreme. That should do it. And then maybe like that. Yes, that sounds good. That's already the same color. Maybe a bit lighter. I'm not sure. Maybe I should cancel that last change. A tool that can be useful in that kind of situation is this kind of spray. It will let you blur colors to make them more similar to each other. So what color do I want to keep as the base? That one, I think. Then I will increase the size a little bit, that's too much. So as you can see here, I will put a number, that's a number of pixels, so maybe 4. No, that's too much. 3. Even that is a lot. 2 should be enough. And now by clicking, well, I can change here the, how is it called in English? Well, the speed at which it changes to make the tool more efficient at its work. And I think that's okay. Maybe we'll make a bit lighter and then a bit darker on the side. I think that's good. Alright. But now, there is a little problem with what I just did. That is to say, my tool went outside the borders. And here we cannot see it, but in fact, this is not truly transparent. There is some color here, as you can see. So I will remove it with the delete button on my keyboard. And now we're good. There's no color outside the figure. Alright, I think we're done with the hair for now. Maybe we'll make it lighter later. Maybe I should make these 2 pixels lighter right away. Too light. I don't want to make too much of a difference. Just slightly lighter. Maybe this one should be lighter too. And that one. Alright, perfect. Now, we have the hair that's clearly separated from the rest. I will save before anything else. Export as. I will change my folder in order to not mix it up with vanilla sprites. I will rename it, so maybe Dead Enaries 1, and then I will try to make the same kind of changes on the other image. Why right now? Because then if I do it later, it will be harder to find the same color filters. But luckily, that's not really a problem here, because the head and hair do not change at all with the attack sprite. So I just have to copy what I just did. And I will show you for the robe how to do it if the shape changes, because the shape of the robe will change, unlike the shape of the hair. So let's remove everything again, and then select everything, cancel everything we just did, and then paste, and we can just place it here, and done. We now have the beginning of our 2 sprites. Alright, now what should we do? Yes, the robe. So I will remove once again everything except the part that I want to change, that is to say the robe. So I will only keep the clothing. Alright, Done. And now I can just copy the clothing, return to where I was right before, and done. We can just paste the clothing, and now we can change the colors safely. So, I said I wanted black. Let's try it. I will decrease luminosity to make it darker. It makes me think that Enaries apparently have the same base sprite as MA Man Witches of Avalon. Are they called witches? No, Crone, I think. Crones. Yes, Crone of Avalon. I think that's the same base sprite. So instead of changing it by hand, I could probably use it. That would probably give a better result. Let's try. So I will save. The sprites, just like I did earlier. Of course, I don't want the end result to be too much like the Crone of Avalon, who already has grey hair. But I think the jewels will be enough to clearly keep it different. So let's open just one sprite at a time, because I don't want GIMP to crash like last time. I'm not completely sure that the shape is the same, because the witch appears older. Well, let's see. Oh, right. I will first need to once again take the hair, since it doesn't have the same shape, but will allow me to not just the hair, actually, everything that's not the robe. I need to take everything that's not the robe. So actually, to do that, I can just paste the robe, then use the color filter here, put luminosity at maximum, then again color, and remove luminosity. And now we can take a color that will be useful to select only that shape, and now I can remove that shape. I don't want to take the shadow, because it will then mix up with the other shadow and make a different color. And now I select everything, I cancel all I just did. I will keep it risk of crash. And let's see. Alright, the picture is not big enough. Oh, it is, actually. It is big enough. Alright. The shapes are not the same, just as I feared. There are slight differences. I don't know exactly which ones, but it means basically that it will be probably harder to base our color on the Crone, sorry. So let's abandon that idea, and let's go back to our color filters. So I will keep open the Crone in order to have a comparison right next to it, and let's see. I will need to decrease both luminosity and saturation, and then maybe I increased luminosity too much. Then maybe increase contrast a little bit, but apparently that may not be necessary. I will still do it a little bit, at least to see what happens then. Yeah, it will probably be too contrasted. Yeah, I think that's okay anyway. So I can now merge both layers, and save. And now I will do the same on the other picture before I forget my my color filter. So first thing, I need to cut again the robe, because it has a different shape. Done. And now, that will be very easy. As in the last time, I just paste it, but GIMP has kept in its memory the color filter I used last time, and there's even the time of it. And done. We now have both ropes. So actually, these two sprites are nice enough that they could already be used for something. I mean, they are clearly distinct from the crown, they are clearly distinct from the Enaries. They have, well, the mix-up of golden jewelry and a black robe is pretty cool, I think, but that's not exactly what I'm looking for right now. So I could simply save these two sprites separately and then go on a different file in order to keep that sprite. Maybe if sometimes I want to add a hero to Soromacia or something. I mean, Soromacia already has 3 heroes and they're good. It's not necessary to add more, but who knows, maybe one day that sprite could be useful. So I will save again to another name, or actually I will rename the one I already saved. I will name it Black Enaries. Since we didn't save but actually exported, it's okay to change the name while the files are open in GIMP. Now, we want to give it more of an undead aspect. That may be hard. I don't know yet if I will succeed. Maybe I should start by looking for some skulls or something. So I could just start with looking for undead beings, you see, by putting the undead tag here. The tags are the comments that are indicated here. By putting the undead tag in the property key, I can look for all beings that are undead in the game. So, leashes are to look too much like skeletons. I want something that looks more like a zombie. So probably a Solace, but I'm not sure. Maybe Solaces will look too dumb. So maybe an Armorian priest. Not mages because they look like shadows. But maybe that, but it's not the good right posture here. It's not the right angle for the head, I think. Worst case scenario, I will try, but this may do it. Even though the hat will change the shape, obviously. Oh, that's maybe a good one. I will keep it on the side. Of course, not Jotuns, or lizards, or Atlanteans. Not interested, sorry. I should just put size 2 here. I think I will keep the sensor. It's close enough, probably. Not perfect, of course, but I can probably do by hand the necessary modifications. And actually, I may do everything by hand because it's such a small bit of pixels that I probably don't need to use a filter for that. But we'll see, we'll see. Oh, that might be good, because I mean, they have the same posture and even almost the same body. Let's keep both. Alright, that's enough. So, Delnat being a Soromacia hero, it's obvious that we should start with her, right? I probably don't need the attack sprite right now. Let's see. She's a bit green. Maybe that could do it, but now I'm thinking that her nemesis, Fomoria's hero, how is he called? Maybe he's not undead. Well, he must not be undead since we didn't see him here. But I want to check. Him, yes. He's not undead, so it must be pink skin, right? But it could be closer than Enaries otherwise. Closer to Enaries. Yeah. So, not useful for now. So, she's green, but I think that them are the Biancide and the Sensor are more like grey. So I want to check, at least. Interesting. A little bit purple. Oh, and green actually. So the same as her? Almost the same. Even greener actually. Well, that's surprising because when you see the sprite in small, it appears to be grey, not green. Anyway, let's come back to the basic layout. And I think I will keep Delnat then. Now, I just want to change the face and the hands. So, the hands are going to be very simple because they have only two colors. So, let's take the first color. And I think that this one is not dark enough. That's the same, so we'll take this one instead. And now the face. So again, that's only 6 pixels, but I will just copy it exactly. I think that's the best I can do. And done! The sprite is finished. So let's save it. Well, we renamed the old one, so we can just keep the same name. And done. I don't think I will need GIMP anymore today. Now, let's see what we made. I think it looks pretty good. We'll see how it is in game. So now I select both and I will use a little software that's very useful and that you can find in Redrob's modding starter pack. Basically, with a simple right click, I can just convert any picture I want into any format I want. So right now we have PNGs, but that's not what we want for Dominions. We want TGA. So I click on TGA and I click on convert, and magic! We now have 2 TGA files. I can open them with GIMP, of course, but they're harder to visualize since, of course, in my folder, well, they are not visible like PNGs. Furthermore, if I send them on Discord, for example, or another software of that kind, well, when I send PNGs, people can see the image right away, while if I send TGAs, people will have to download it first manually. So anyway, I will copy it and I will put it right away in Helenica's sprite folder, and that way I will be able to test it as soon as I want. I won't forget to add it. That would cause a crash. That would be unfortunate. Now I can just launch Notepad. Usually it's launched at all times, but I had to reboot my computer. Now I will go in the spell section. We want a spell that transforms the caster into another monster. So for that, I think we need effect 10,130. Yes, that's right. And then we want to restrict it to the nation, to a caster, select the target monster, and that's all. That is very simple. So we will need a name for the spell, we will need a description, we will need a research level, and I don't need quotation marks. We will need a school, a cost, well, a gem cost, it's called fatigue cost. We'll need a path, maybe another path, but for now, let's say there's only one path. Then effect, always that one. Number of effects, 1 of course. It will be transformed into a specific monster. I will not select it by ID because I only use IDs when necessary. And I think that's all. So, what will the real name of our transformed monster be? We need something that's thematic enough. Something that fits the lore of the nation, but also inspires the undead feeling and the production of life gems feeling. So there is a bit of a paradox in that spell, right? It's not pure necromancy, it's not something that just plays with death, it also creates life in some way. It just displaces life force actually from inside the body of the caster to, well, the pretender's treasury. So we could use the exsanguinate words. Yes, because that's like if blood was removed from the body. Well, not blood in that case, rather life force, but that's almost the same. And actually it could even be blood because, well, we used green, right? I mean, that guy definitely looks like he doesn't have any blood in his veins anymore. So maybe... Oh, I will check to be sure the English word for that. So, exsanguine, right. So, we could call the spell exsanguination. Maybe with an adjective to make it sound more mystical. It's not just any kind of exsanguination, right? It's highly magical. And there's even a sacred aspect to it, because the caster is literally sacrificing his own life for the pretender god. So we need to give it a more epic feeling. Enjoy the music while I'm thinking. Well, I will keep it like that for now. I'll probably change it later. And let's go right away to the well, the rest of our work here. So, how will the monster be called? Maybe exsanguine Enaries? Again, that's a placeholder. I will have to think better of a more interesting name, probably. The description, I will write it later, but for now I put a dot here so that the game doesn't crash when I test it. And now, well, I will have to keep the space. Alright, for now let's call it exsanguination and exsanguine Enaries, but I think I will change it. Now, I will go in the summons category of the mod, here. That's more organized that way. Then, no, new monster, sorry. So, we will first define the sprites. Sprite 1. Helenica. Dead Enaries 1 dot TGA. And sprite 2. Name. Exsanguine Enaries as a placeholder. Description, I will write it later. Now, well, we will start by copying an Enaries. So copy stats, and what's its ID number? 1181. Now, what's the difference with a regular Enaries? First, it is undead, obviously. So I need to check, do all undead have manually... well, I will look at for leeches, for example. No, maybe like acolytes of Eldregate. Not that one, yes, that one. So... okay, so they have Need Not Eat, yes. Spirit Sight, I think, of course, but Enaries already have Spirit Sight in Helenica at least. Holy, no. It shouldn't be holy. Cold resistance, of course. And poison resistance. Which is pretty interesting, because, oh no, never mind. I was gonna say that it can be blessed by Soromacia's spell Ophidian Blood, but actually that spell doesn't affect undead beings. So that's not true. Maybe we should give it a paralysis attack instead of his regular fist. So paralysis, paralyze, yes. We'll use that one. Okay, that's not all. There are stat differences with regular humans, so let's compare, for example, acolytes with acolytes of Eldregate. They're basically the same dude, but the one is alive and the other one is a raised undead. So what are the differences? Of course, hit points. Undead beings are a lot more resilient than regular humans. So in that case, hit points are purely and simply doubled. So I will take Enaries to see their base stats. I will also check if Helenica changed their stats in any way. Alright. Done. So, Enaries. Where are they? So, Curse Luck Shield, Death Curse. Our Exsanguine Enaries should already get those abilities, because I modified the Enaries before the summons category. So when we will copy the stats of Enaries, we will also copy the changes that were made before. If we had changed Enaries after the summons category, then that would not copy them. But here we're safe. Enaries have that. They also have the ability to equip female-only items. That should be transferred as well. And that's all. Alright, so no stat change. So HP, I did well to verify because they don't have the same number of HPs as acolytes. Maybe because they're old, I think they're old anyway, but usually when something is due to old age in the Dominion's mod inspector, the part of the stat, well, the stats that's modified by old age can be moused over to look at the base value, like with attack skill, for example. So in the case of attack skill, in fact, the base value is already indicated, it's 9 here, but it becomes 10 because of the weapon. So that's the reverse logic. But anyway, here, it appears that actually Enaries aren't old at all. So 18 HPs, what else should we change? We see here that protection is increased by 5, natural protection, magic resistance by 4, so we make it 18. Morale, of course, is maximized. Strength is largely increased by 6. Attack, yes, 9 plus 4, so 13. Defense, plus 4 again, 13. Precision, that's the same, so we'll cancel that. Attack speed, oh, slightly lower, so AP 6. Then map move, of course it's greater because undead beings can walk day and night without tiring, so map move. And for commanders, weirdly, the actual map move is 2 bigger than what I write here. So if I wanted to have 22, I should write 20. So here, I want 22, so I write 20. Encumbrance 0, of course, because undeads are tireless. A max age, of course, 500, because they never die again. Anyway, they're immune to old age. Well, no, not really. They're immune to diseases, but not old age. They still get, I think, attack and, well, stats penalties. Anyway, undead leadership, it should be increased. We'll put it at a good undead leader, so that will add 80 right away. Then what? I think we are done. And now, what we really wanted to do is first add a way to generate nature gems, and also add a way to ensure that the monster will die eventually. So now is the time where we should start thinking about the cost of the spell, because we want the cost to be proportional to how much that monster will give gems before it dies out. Or we could say the reverse. We should choose a number of gems. Well, we should choose the amount of gems generated and the time it can survive before it dies out, depending on the cost of the ritual. Given that the ritual also costs 1 Enaries, since the Enaries will eventually die. Furthermore, since you don't want to lose your nature gems, you probably don't want to use that undead Enaries in battle. So basically, the very moment you cast the spell, your Enaries becomes a lab rat for the 6 months or so he still has to live. What? Oh yes, I forgot to remove the upkeep, and that's done. So, gem production. So we want him to produce nature gems, that's 6, the number of nature paths. For now, that's a placeholder, but let's say 2 nature gems per month. And we want him to die, so we will use land damage and underwater damage. Oh, and of course I forgot to make him a poor amphibian, since it's an undead. I know that acolytes don't have the poor of human tag, but I think that it should be okay here. I mean, most undeads are poor of humans, so it's more like acolytes of Eldregates. Eldregates are exceptions. So I will keep that poor of human tag here. Also, I'm not sure because they have claws. Well, we'll see later. Land damage and underwater damage. So these two abilities are very, very, very useful. I use them a lot for dummy monsters. Dummy monsters are monsters that never appear to the eyes of the player if everything works properly, and that ensures that some events work as you wish. Basically, they are logical switches, because yes, dominance modding is a bit clunky that way. You need basically dummy monsters to do a lot of things that you couldn't do otherwise, because either we don't have the proper modding commands, or the modding commands we have work even worse than dummy monsters. Dummy monsters are pretty clunky because they are stealthy in order to not appear to the eyes of players, but that's not perfect. Even if you give them 999 stealth value and the invisibility tag and a bunch of other interesting abilities like mindless, immobility, etc., even then there can be rare occurrences under which players will find them and interact with them, and you absolutely do not want that. Not only because it breaks immersion, that's a problem, that's not dramatic. The real problem is that if, by mistake, they die or are displaced, then it can completely break event chains. Furthermore, if they don't die, then the monsters that found them will lose the battle. And if they lose the battle, it means that the player lost some units, or some things at least, that he shouldn't have lost. And that's unfair for the player. So in both cases, that's a problem. But these issues are rare enough that it's okay to use the monsters. Anyway, we don't have a choice. They allow to create lots and lots of very powerful and unique effects. So anyway, let's return to land damage and underwater damage. I explained that these commands are very useful, in particular for dummy monsters. Why? Because they allow you to control exactly how long a monster will survive. And they don't need to use events, which are very clunky as well for other reasons, such as each event can only trigger a single time per province each month, which means that if you have two monsters of the same type in the same province, then you need not one but two events to kill both the same month. So it's better to avoid killing things with events whenever you can, and land damage and underwater damage allow to do exactly that. There are other reasons for that fact, but anyway, that's one of them. So now we need to decide how long the exsanguine Enaries will survive before he dies. So basically, these commands work by setting a percentage of HP that is lost each month while the monster is on this terrain type, either land or underwater. But since our monster will have both commands, it will lose HP every month regardless of the terrain type. So, for example, if I set the value to 20, it means that the monster will lose 20% of its maximum HP every month until it is dead. So basically, the first month it is alive, that is to say, the very month you cast the spell, he will lose 20% of its HP. So for 18, that will be probably 3 HPs, I think. Unless No, it will be 4 actually. I think it will be 4, yes, because Dominions usually work with groups of 5 things. For example, for gems. For example, if you use forge bonuses for items, for example, a 20% forge bonus, well, that will mean that the monster the item will cost 1 less gem per group of 5 gems in the cost. And if the last group is not complete, for example, if the item costs 18 gems, well, we have 3 groups of 5 gems and 1 group of 3 gems, so that's 4 groups total, so 4 gems. So here I think that with 20% this monster will lose 4 HPs per month. That is to say, if its maximum HPs aren't increased, but even if its maximum HPs are increased, the result will basically be the same. It will always die after the same amount of months, since it is a percentage of the total. So, with 20% HP, that means that as soon as you cast the spell, you no longer are at 18 HPs, but you are at 14 HPs. Then, the following month, 10 HPs, then 6, then 2, and then you die. So, first month, the month you cast the spell, you are at 14, but you also have 2 gems, 2 nature gems. Then, the next month, second month, you are at 10, but you have 4 gems. Third month, you are at 6, and you have 6 gems. Fourth month, you are at 2, and you have 8 gems. And the fifth month, you die, so you cannot get the gems. So basically, with these settings, the monster would survive for 4 months and get 8 gems. I think that's right, but I will have to test it in order to be sure. Let's see, that's not long enough to be interesting, I think. I want something that lasts longer. So maybe 10% would be more interesting. If I put 10%, I think it will be 2 HP per month, which will mean 9 months in total. Well, that will mean 8 months of survival, so 8 times 2 will mean 16 gems. That's more reasonable, I think. 16 gems. 8 months? That could do it. Maybe it's slightly too long, I don't know. Let's go for that for now. I mean, yeah, after 9 months it dies out. That's a phrase that's pretty simple to understand and to... I mean, 9 is a number that's pretty round. I mean, it's 3/4 of a year. Alright. Let's go for that number for now. Now I have to set the cost of the spell. So, also the research goal in the school, of course. And the path. I will put first path as death, of course, since I want the gem expenditure to be a death gem expenditure, and I will set a second cost because I want to put some emphasis on the fact that this is a paradoxical spell effect. You know, it includes some necromancy, yes, but it also produces some life force in some way. Well, it doesn't create it from nothing, of course, but you get some nature gems. So, school, that's probably the least important part here. Let's say thaumaturgy. That's a school that I think is a bit underused, although it's true that there's communions there, and well, communions are very useful for Sauromacia, so maybe that's not the best choice, but I mean, all schools are very useful to Sauromacia, and anyway, it will probably be research level 0, so we don't really care. Now, this thing, with the current settings, ends up giving you 16 gems. So we could simply price it 16. We have to add 2 zeros. That's weird, but that's how it works. So 1,600 means 16 gems. But if we do that, then the player simply loses the NRA entirely and gets nothing in exchange. Meanwhile, there is also a fact to consider, which is that if you find a thaumaturgy rebate site, for example, a site which reduces the cost of thaumaturgy spells or rituals by 20%, then the cost of the spell will be reduced when you cast it there. The same goes if there is a thaumaturgy reduction, a cost reduction event, a worldwide event. Both of these things I know are pretty rare, but I shouldn't forget while creating the spell that these things exist. Now, I could tweak the cost differently depending on how powerful I want the spell to be. I mean, it is okay if some spells are very powerful, I mean give great value, and other spells are only slightly useful. Because you don't always want every spell to be as predominant in the strategies of a nation. Furthermore, sometimes you want a spell to be a buff to the nation. You want a spell to be strong enough to single-handedly bring the nation to high rank in a high class of power. So here that is not the case. I want this spell to be used as a pure exchange. I want it to be useful, I want it to be worth casting, but I don't want it to be a gem generation spell. I want it to be a gem trade spell. So I don't want to price it too high. Here for too low, sorry. But here it's still too high, I think, because you're losing the NRA for nothing, basically, just for the opportunity to exchange your gems. That's probably too expensive. You can compare that, for example, to what happens when you use the Make Pearls ability. Well, the Pearl Collector, I think, or something like that. The Pearl. Well, anyway, this ability that Pelagian mages have, or for example, in Delphanes, that is to say, late ages Arcosiphail, in the same way, you can convert nature gems into death gems by spending just a mage turn. That's not very expensive. Of course, that's only 2 or 3 gems, I think, or maybe 4, I don't remember. But, yes, I think it's 4. But losing a mage entirely is more expensive than that, even if it gifts you with 16 gems over the course of 8 months. So, I don't want it to be that expensive, I think. But if I make it less expensive, then maybe I want to well, maybe I don't want to make it less expensive because it would be too small of a spell with not enough risk involved. So maybe I want to increase the power of the spell and keep at least that cost. Or maybe I want even to increase the power of a spell so much that I can increase the cost even more. I think that 16 gems would be a nice cost, but I don't want to increase the duration, I think, before the NRA dies. 8 months, that's already quite a lot. I mean, that's interesting to have a long duration because it means that there is more risk involved. I mean, that's more opportunities for the mage to die prematurely. So that's interesting. I mean, you have to control it right. Of course, it's not very difficult. You just keep him in the fort. But anyway, that's a drawback, and I like drawbacks. So I don't want, I think, to increase the duration. So that means I have to increase the number of gems which are generated from 2 per month to 3 per month, which is interesting because basically that means you cast you spend your mage turn to convert gems for 3 gems per turn every turn, except that you don't spend mage turns, well, only once. Alright, so if I make it 3 gems per month, it will be 24 gems, which is a nice round number. No, not 24, sorry. It would be... yes, it would be 24. So no, what am I thinking? 2 times 8, 16, yes, 3 times 8, 24, of course. I don't know why I had 6 instead of 8 in my mind. Yes, I had 6 because nature is the sixth path. Anyway, 24 gems. So, for 24 gems, I could price it 20 gems. Which means, basically, that you lose your mage for 4 gems. I mean, it's as if your mage costed 4 gems. I think that an Enaries is worth more than 4 gems because 1 gem could be considered to cost roughly 20 gold. Well, we can tweak that a little bit. I mean, maybe between 15 and 30 gold, which would mean that an Enaries is worth between 10 gems and 5 gems. Furthermore, there are other costs than losing the mage in this spell, since you also lose 1 mage turn, and it takes time to have the effect, which means that you take some risks. You don't have the whole reward for casting the spell immediately. That's a drawback that should be represented in the gem cost. But I don't necessarily want the spell to be very powerful. I mean, even if you're losing a bit when casting it, you're still losing much less than if you were simply alchemizing your gems from death to nature. So that still is a very useful spell, even if it costs the same number of gems as you gain, I think. Well, you're still losing an Enaries. That's a steep cost. 20 gems for 24 gems over 8 months and losing an Enaries. Is that right? Maybe I want to decrease the cost a little bit, but I mean that's already pretty attractive because it means that you can gain more gems than you spent. So that's almost gem generation. I mean, you're basically converting gold into gems too here, since Enaries only cost gold, right? So basically, that's gold to gem conversion as well. And I don't want it to be too much of that. I don't want it to be too much of a gold to gem conversion. If that is an issue, I could simply increase the duration and then just increase the duration, maybe a little bit the cost, and then the proportion of the gold cost would be lower. Let's see, 20 gems for 24 nature gems, but you spend an Enaries. Also, one thing to consider is that you kinda lose your Enaries right away, since you can't use it in battle. I mean, it can still be useful as a lab rat, or as a ritual spellcaster, or even a site searcher, although it's a bit risky because you absolutely want your Enaries to be in a lab before he dies out, in order to retrieve your gems. Also, you could always put it on another commander in the same province, but you need to have one for that. Maybe I should reduce the cost a little bit, maybe. 18 gems. I don't want the spell to be too advantageous. but I still want it to be good enough. I must be wary of players just spamming that spell on all of their Enaries to have tons and tons of gems. I mean, you could basically cast this with all of your Enaries if you wanted. You would lose all of them, but you would gain so many gems. But at the same time, it costs gems. So you can't do that, actually. You need so many gems to do it. Alright, let's make it 18 gems. Then, if we consider that an Enary costs 5 gems, then you also gain 1 gem for your trouble. That's not much, that's true. But you still get the conversion. Maybe 16 gems then. Maybe. That's the lowest I'm ready to go. I mean, there could be some hacks too, in order to keep your Enary alive. I'm not completely sure about it, that's definitely hard, but maybe if your Enary enters a battle and then casts Regeneration, he could survive, he could regain some HPs, while outside battles he wouldn't. So basically, you could basically hack the spell to have an Enary that survives indefinitely and creates 3 gems a turn. You could then do that for all of your Enaries. You would need to battle constantly. I don't want that to happen, so maybe I should make the Exsanguine Enary immobile. That's what I had in mind already. Or maybe just give him some homesickness. That's interesting because it means that you can still try it if you want, but that's just very risky because your Enary then dies out much quicker, so you have much less opportunities to battle. I think that's not a bad idea. Basically, there's a cost. There's a cost of HPs for spending time outside your home province. That's very expensive as a cost. I mean, since you don't get these HPs back, that means that if I make it 10%, you lose 3 gems for each turn you spend outside your capital. Unless, of course, you succeed in giving your Enary some regeneration and fighting. And not being killed in battle. Alright. I think that should be a good value. And then, I don't want to encourage that kind of behavior. So maybe that's not enough. I mean, that's okay if that's possible, but that really shouldn't be exploitable. I mean, that should be a miracle if you succeed in gaining gems from that. Basically. Is 10% enough? That would mean that after 4 months outside your home province, you would die. You would need to have a battle every 4 months, each time casting regeneration and surviving the battle without being hit. Well, without being hurt before. Yes, you would just need to win the battle actually. Because regeneration goes on after the enemies are routed. I'm not even sure that the hack is possible in the first place. I think so, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, I'm 99% sure. That's a lot. 20% HP per month. If I make it 30%, well, 20 for the homesickness, that would be 6 HPs per month. So you have to battle once every 2 months, at least. That's a steep cost, but province defense can be enough for that. And the real difficulty then is coming back to your home province when you're done. But even if you succeed to survive for just 2 more months than normal, that's still 6 gems gained. So yeah, Yeah, I think that's worth it. I mean, you could just give them some boots and then go through several provinces at once. So yeah, I need to put that much homesickness, I think. All right. Now, 18 gems for an immobile Enaries, giving out 24 gems, and then dying, with some risk involved, and some time required to get the whole effect. You can't spam it because it costs death gems. Basically, it means 6 gems for one Enaries. I could reduce the cost a bit, I think. I'm not completely sure, but I think so. Oh yes, I forgot to restrict the spell to Soromacia. Done. And of course I forgot to make it castable only by Enaries. Only monster, I think. That's right? No. Only caster? No. Only MNR, yes, MNR. Only MNR, of course. Alright. So, I said that I should probably reduce the cost a little bit. I'm not completely sure. 3 gems per turn. Okay, yeah, you really need some time before the spell pays out for itself. And nature gems have some uses, sure, but that's pretty limited. Alright, I think I can safely make it 15 gems. Because at worst, that means that you gain 3 more gems. I mean, that's okay. Just 3 gems, I mean, 3 gems, 3 free gems after 8 months for that risk and losing a mage. Yes, I think that's okay. Alright, let's test this now. Let's test this. So, I'm not sure if you'll be able to see the game. I hope so. I think so. So, I had to cut the video because, well, the game wasn't displaying properly, and I only found out about it after I had finished recording the video. But since the video didn't make much sense without a little bit of testing, I decided to re-record what I did. So, first thing is that I modified the spell a bit more since since earlier, because I found several mistakes. Well, let's see in game first how it works now. So I will create a small game. As Soromacia, I will pick this god because it's interesting since in Hellenica it has the Carcass Collector ability and it produces nature gems. So in fact, with that spell, that pretender could create an interesting loop, since you can first convert nature gems into death gems, then cast the spell, get more nature gems, then convert them, etc. So the spell would become a true gem generator and not just a way to trade gems. Anyway, I don't need anything particular in that game, just a way to just some Enaries. So I will wait for a few gems to come. And done, we have enough. Because one of the things I changed is the cost. After a little bit of reflection, I decided that 18 is probably the minimum it has to cost, because when comparing it to the carcass collector ability, for example, it appears that this spell is already very good. It creates more gems than you start with. Of course, it also costs you a mage, but since the mage only costs gold, I think it doesn't really matter, especially since you're also gaining some mage turns. Well, if you consider that losing the mage doesn't lose you some mage turns, of course it does, but what I mean is you have to cast the spell only once to get 24 nature gems, while with Carcass Collector, for example, in Arcos Epheil, in Vanilla, you have to cast the spell 6 times to get the same amount of death gems. So another thing I changed is that now the spell can only be cast in the capital at the Beta Stream, which is one of Sauramacia's starting sites. Why did I do that? Because I think it prevents the spell from being spammed too easily. Basically, you want to move your Enaries from their production centers to your capital before you can cast it. Why that? Well, because most of the time in your capital you don't want to recruit Enaries. You prefer to recruit Manflayers, or maybe eventually, I meant Witch Kings, and maybe sometimes Manflayers, because in Hellenica they also have a nice sacred retinue. But yeah, most of the time you only want to recruit Witch Kings in Sauramacia, in your capital. So these are two mechanical changes I made to the spell, but I also had to do a few bug fixes. For example, the life lost each month from the spell was not the right amount. I hadn't calculated the percentage correctly. In fact, you have first to calculate how much life you would lose if decimal numbers were allowed. So, for example, when this scenario will be transformed, well, let's transform him immediately. Here, we have our nice sprite. I'm pretty happy with it for now. And the maximum HP he has is 18. So, what if decimal numbers were allowed? Then you would lose 1.8 HP per turn from a 10% HP loss per turn. However, the game then rounds that to the smaller value, I think, if I remember correctly. So for 18 it will be 1 HP, but if we have 20%, like it was the case with our home shape, homesickness, sorry. So for 20%, it won't be 1.8, it will be the double, which is 3.6. So then, by rounding that to the lower number, the lower whole number, it would become 3 instead of 2. So 20% is not necessarily the double of 10%, because here, as we just saw, with 10% you lose 1 HP per turn, while with 20% you lose 3 HPs per turn, because of a rounding mechanic. So I had to change the homesickness and land damage and underwater damage values. I changed the underwater damage and land damage values to 15% in order to ensure that the NIA loses correctly 2 HPs per turn as I intended, and in the same way for the homesickness I made it 25% so that the NIA loses 4 HPs per turn as I wanted. And as you can see, it works perfectly. As I predicted, the NIA already comes with 2 less HPs as it had originally. and then each turn it loses 2 more HPs and gains 3 gems, sometimes a few afflictions, but it doesn't matter much. And now if we test what happens when expanding, when moving out of our home province. So you see here he has 12 HPs. If I move him here, he will most likely have 6 HPs, because 2 plus 4 equals 6, and that's it. And now if he stays here, he dies, but if he comes back, he only loses 2 HPs, so he has at 4. Alright, everything works properly. Another thing to consider, which I hadn't thought about correctly earlier, is that for the hack to happen, you have to find a way to give regeneration to an undead being, since that guy is undead. But I think that the self-regeneration spell doesn't work on undead beings. In which school is it already? Maybe enchantment? Personal regeneration doesn't affect inanimate beings, so actually it would affect that guy since he's not inanimate, he's only undead. So the hack could probably work. We could maybe test it right now. I wonder if we will die before the battle occurs. I think not. Oh, but yeah, I haven't researched it yet. So let's research that. We wanted enchantment 2? Yes, that's right. Yes, I lost the gems for nothing. That's okay. Alright. So, we want to cast Exsanguination here. Then cast a specific spell, personal regeneration. He will spend some nature gems to do so. That's fine. And then let's try that. Yes, we'll probably lose the battle. That's not really... oh, not really an issue. I just want to see if he can regain permanent HPs that way. Maybe we should get some more warriors to not lose the battle instantly. Oh shit, I sent my god my mistake. Oh, I'm stupid. Anyway, that's not a problem. So, how many HPs? 10, that's okay, we have time. Alright, let's do this. Let's see. So, he starts with 10 HP. He did cast regeneration, but it doesn't seem to be gaining HPs. So actually, the hack isn't possible. Oh! Healing Touch worked. So the hack is possible. Oops. and he regained HP. So I did well to give him a homesickness then. Alright, so I think that does it. Yes, another bug I fixed, well, that's not really a bug, but I had wrote by mistake 80 after good undead leader, which is useless. Good undead leader is enough, so I removed that 80, and that's all I remember for now. Anyway, well, what we wanted to do is done, so that video is now finished. Thank you for having watched it, and I hope you enjoyed it. See you next time!